Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
My name is Eric, and I'm here with kickstarting champion Michael Kester.
Oh wow, is that what I'm going as today?
Let's just straight out of the gate on that, right? Because we're literally down to the 11th hour.
Yeah.
Well, not literally. We're figuratively down to the 11th hour. We have several hours left. But when you're listening to this, it may be the 11th hour.
Yeah, it's true.
So why don't you give me the movies we're doing and the awesome Kickstarter?
So today we're doing Humanoids from the Deep and Mars Needs Women. And the awesome Kickstarter, that's for my band Glittermouse. We're trying to get our album funded on the internet there.
Right.
And we're pretty close. We're not as close as I'd like to be, which would be done.
Well, you're moments away from being done. So what you mean is you'd like to be closer to your monetary goal, not closer to being done, because that will happen. I can guarantee you the Kickstarter
that's true. Will end regardless of its success.
Right.
Yeah, we need a lot more money than I have.
Right.
So anybody who wants to donate to our Kickstarter, the link will be on the website, and I'll throw it up on the Facebook again.
I don't even know that I'd say this is probably we're a month into your Kickstarter, to be correcting you on this, but I don't even know that I'd use the word donation. I think they're investing in the album.
It's pledges. They're called pledges.
Are they?
And
I don't know that I don't know how I feel about that, because you're basically funding the album.
For us, it's investing, yeah. I mean, the way we have our Kickstarter set up is you're essentially lining yourself up to be a producer for the record. Kickstarter calls it pledges.
The other thing that you haven't really mentioned on the show is you guys have ridiculous incentives.
Yeah.
You can basically pledge next to no money and exploit the people in the band to do, crazy things.
Yeah, the one incentive that keeps getting bought is that we will read your favorite book from start to finish, like in a video or in an audio file.
It's ridiculous.
Or we will reenact your favorite episode of television to the best of our ability.
How much does that cost?
$75.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. That's $75.
You know that my favorite book is Atlas Shrugged, and it's some 1,200 pages.
There are 5 of us. We'll get it done.
All right. So
you can just go to kickstart.glittermouse.com.
This is the last moment to do that, so go do that.
This is, it's over. It's over on March 2nd. So if you're listening to this after March 2nd, you're too late.
We're going to spoil both Humanoids from the Deep and Mars Needs Women.
Yeah.
So you can use the chapters that are actually inside the very show itself. That's my favorite way to phrase that.
Yeah.
Just, click around, figure out how that works, and skip over the movies. Humanoids from the Deep is not called Monster. Where's the discrepancy there?
Okay, so I know we've talked about this before, but when movies came out in the late 70s, early 80s, when Roger Corman was really making mad bank on movies like Humanoids from the Deep.
Monsters, Humanoids from the Deep.
They would put a movie out, and then it would do well or poorly in the box office, at which point the creators of the film would change the title and put it out again.
Really?
Yeah. And that's how they made more money on the same film.
Wow.
So the film, when it went to reel, was supposed to be called Monster, and I think that was like the UK title.
Sure.
But then this was, the late 70s, right before video.
Right.
And so by the time it went to video, based on the commercial failure of Monster, and by commercial failure, I mean it made profit, but nobody was talking about it.
Sure.
So when they put it to video, they called it Humanoids from the Deep in an effort to squeeze the very last blood-sucking penny out of the film.
It's not and this often strikes me about exploitation, it's not catering to the lowest common denominator.
No.
This is a film that appeals to a very small demographic, and it certainly has some punches to it.
Well, it's fucking violent as hell.
Right.
Which...
Well, you start the movie with a dead dog, right?
Yeah.
I wish all movies killed the dog just right away. Kids and dogs.
Yep.
It's a shock value thing, and we've talked about it before. But I think what the movie means to say when it does this is, anything could happen. Look how we killed the dog.
Yeah, we fucking killed the dog, so now what? What won't we do?
But the thing about the kind of movies that actually kill the dogs and kill the children is anything couldn't happen in those films. Actually, only one thing could happen, and that's the other characters can die.
Right.
So by anything can happen, it means anything within the subset of these 4 people will or will not die.
But then you have to keep in mind that this film has the random side children that may or may not get eaten and or raped by the humanoids.
Sure, right.
Big letdown.
Piranha style, where we may just
Yeah.
bring more people in or not.
Yeah, right.
My favorite types of these shock value moments are where they kind of rub your nose in it.
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite dog deaths are when they're not shy at all. They show the mangled corpse later. They let the characters get traumatized by the dog's death.
Right.
It's not just, throw it in the meat grinder and we're done with it.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing in movies. I mean, that's why I have such a fixation about the dog deaths being a taboo. Because people get really worked up about this.
Oh, yeah.
Some people will not watch a movie where a dog gets hurt. They just won't do it.
Then there's something like Apocalypse Now where they actually kill a cow.
Sure. Well, I mean, that's
for real.
We're talking about a totally, that's something we talked about on Cannibal Holocaust too.
Right.
Was actually hurting animals during the film.
Yeah, but Apocalypse Now is considered one of the greatest films of all time. So I guess we'll forego that violent animal death. But I don't want to watch Humanoids from the Deep if they're going to fake kill that poor puppy.
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about one versus the other, the thing that drives me nuts about that is these people who will not see dogs get murdered in films have no problem with humans being mangled, decapitated.
That's very true.
Something we're not taking into consideration, though, is that nothing kills a party faster than bringing your dead dog.
Yeah.
When you're trying to have a little dance, a good time, carrying a dead dog in your arms, probably.
That's very true.
Probably not the way to go.
No.
I do think this movie has a really good tip for exploitation films and something that Mars Needs Women maybe would have been able to use, which is when you need to fill time, you just paste in teenagers making out.
Yeah. Yep. When it comes down to it, you need to exploit the libido and exploit the blood.
It's such an easy thing to fill time, too. I mean, the scenes, they're on a beach and they make out for a couple minutes. Someone watches them. You get in a tent. You make out for a couple more minutes.
Yeah.
You could really fill about 120 minutes with that.
Yeah, well, there are entire Russ Meyer movies that are just topless girls dancing.
Sure.
I'm not saying that, like, whoa, what a crazy experiment in cinema.
Right.
I'm saying, like, if you have an hour to kill, put on Mondo topless because you won't be bored.
Actually, let's stay on the tent moment for a second, because there's something weird that happened in here that I haven't asked your opinion about yet.
Oh, please.
As you know, nothing says make out like ventriloquism, apparently.
Yeah, that guy's an actual ventriloquist actor.
Oh, wow.
He's like a big ventriloquist name.
You say that and it all makes sense to me now.
Yeah, does it?
I was really enjoying
You are the first person in history whose world was brought to light by the phrase big ventriloquist name.
Well, in my head, and I was really enjoying that brief pause there between when I said that and before I received the information.
Yeah.
Because it's like the dog thing. Anything could happen in that moment. I have no idea.
Sure.
But that's the most unbelievable part of this movie is that they're trying to sell how
Sexy
seductive.
ventriloquism.
Yeah, it's just such a weird.
It's a lost art, man.
Piece
the lost art of seduction via ventriloquist dummy.
But it makes sense. It's the El Mariachi idea.
Yeah.
You take the things you have, right?
Yeah.
So we got this guy. He's really fucking good at ventriloquism. I guess we have him seduce a woman, because what else is he going to do?
Yeah, right. He either dies, and what's he do? Has the dummy scream?
Well, he was lined up at that party, but they had to bump him for the dead dog bit. So
Right. Yeah, that's true.
put him in the tent. The one other thing I want to talk about in Humanoids is really liking that harp, the mysterious harp score.
Yeah.
Which is
Oh
another
my God.
character piece of this that's so strange. It's I think about the moment right before when Jerry has half his face eaten.
Yes.
They're on the beach and we don't know what the monster is yet. We're not sure what's happening out there.
Mm-hmm.
And this fucking harp, the music just gives this illusion that there's actually a mystery going on
Right.
when no one would argue there's any sense of mystery
At all. None.
But how could you possibly call a movie out on being predictable when the harp is trying so fucking
Yeah.
hard?
They brought that guy on later. Give this film another element.
Yeah.
Play the
Right.
harp.
We're going to add a whole dimension. It's amazing how much that actually kind of works, though.
Oh, hell
You do
yeah.
feel
Yeah.
like there's some, there's no mystery, but and Humanoids is the wrong place to talk about this, so we'll shelve this. But J.J. Abrams did, I think it was a TED Talk on the concept of, I think he calls it the mystery box. Does any of this sound
Sounds
familiar?
like Call of Duty Zombies.
He talked about the mystery box being this kind of enigma that a film has.
Yeah.
The movies could stand to benefit from having just some sort of elements that the audience doesn't know about, even if it's a completely fabricated element.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that works, even something as simple as the score for Humanoids from the Deep, because you're willing to play along with it. You kind of go, oh, mystery. I like mystery. Oh, this is what's happening on this beach?
I wonder what the mystery is. That's the mystery.
But this is all red herring conversation. This is
Right.
we're talking about ladies on Double Feature today.
Well, I think with Humanoids from the Deep, if you're going to talk about women, you have to start with the production aspect. Are you familiar with this whole thing?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so this movie was directed by a woman. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Named Barbara Peters. So, actually, very apropos, this film was initially offered to Joe Dante. Joe Dante being part of the Corman camp at the time.
Yeah.
And he turned it down probably to do, I don't know, something else. And Barbara Peters, who was an up and comer in the Corman camp, probably just as, I mean, we've talked about this before. She may have been a secretary who was there on the right day, and now she gets to direct.
Yeah, right.
That was Pam Grier's thing, right?
Yeah.
So she steps up to direct this, and she makes this movie called Monster, and Corman watches it after she finishes the movie, and he essentially goes, this isn't violent or naked enough.
Okay, so typical Corman
Right.
affair.
And so here's the interesting part, though, is she goes, well, this is the movie I made. That's not what you say to
Yeah,
Roger
right.
Corman. You don't say, this is the movie I made. If Roger Corman says that won't make money, you say, well, this is my artistic vision. Roger Corman says, I don't give a fuck about that.
This is different than our Gremlins conversation. This really is about
Yeah.
the dollar.
And so Roger Corman goes, okay, whatever. That's fine. This is a great movie. Bye. She walks out of the office. He calls in the second unit director and goes, I need you to shoot violence and tits for 30 minutes and stick it into this movie. And the second unit guy says, all right, I guess I can do that. Now, this is a man, by the way.
Mhm.
The second unit director is a male, at which point he splices all the violence and all the sex stuff into the movie. And Barbara Peters and also the lead actress both ask to have their names removed from the film.
Wow, I had no idea about this.
Roger Corman says, no, you're in the movie. So you're going to take this credit and hopefully it'll help you in your career. I'm painting Roger Corman to be like a total asshole in this situation because
it's funnier.
yeah, but the reality of the situation is if you're working at, I don't even remember which company this was at this point because he sold them off and bought them at so many different times, but maybe New World Pictures at this point.
Yeah, I think New World is
Okay.
what was on our copy of it.
And so it's about the bottom line. All his movies are about making profit or breaking even. And he has a talent for knowing that. And to be honest, Humanoids from the Deep wouldn't have made it on our show if it wasn't violent or sexual.
Sure. That's
Because
true.
what makes it interesting to me is that it's a violent sexual film directed by a woman.
Right.
And then you find out later on, no, not really. But I mean, if you want to talk about the exploitation of women via Humanoids from the Deep, the director herself
Yeah.
became a victim of chauvinistic exploitation because she
sure.
wouldn't shoot blood and tits.
Well, and we've seen, American Psycho, I think, was infamously our
Right.
only other female-directed film on the show, but another movie that's known for sexuality and for blood. But we have, this is a conversation I almost feel like we need to justify a little bit, because we go through a lot of these movies, and we have fun hanging out with girls in slasher films. We don't think about it too much. But Humanoids from the Deep, the monsters are after the women. The film calls attention to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
So it's basically saying, hey, look at me. You kind of have to talk about it now,
Right.
can't you? But just because we can have this conversation about, I don't even want to use a term like the treatment of women in the film because it sounds so, but the way Humanoids from the Deep treats women, I guess.
Mhm.
It's a conversation that isn't necessarily warranted. I don't think we'd come away from Humanoids from the Deep honestly saying it hurts women or it does any. It's
Well,
terrible what happened to the director.
I don't think the average viewer would, but I think somebody who's got to talk about Humanoids from the Deep for 25 minutes definitely would walk away saying that.
All right. So, I don't know. I feel like the film, it's pretty harmless. And I don't think it's necessarily ill-intentioned. It's not to be taken seriously or
Right.
to be a super big deal.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, again, it's part of Corman's bottom line movies, and Roger Corman isn't a chauvinist. He doesn't love slaughtering people, but that's what puts your normal demographic in the seats. The target demographic for a film, I was reading about this not too long ago. It's very interesting. A child will see anything his older brother will see, but an older brother won't see something his younger brother saw.
Interesting.
And a girl will see anything a boy will see, but a boy won't see anything a girl will see. So therefore, your target exploitative audience is the 19-year-old male. And if you can get them to come to a movie, you then also fill in the people younger and the girls at the same age.
Well, and having said all that, we know Humanoids is not on our radar for films that are destroying society.
Sure, right.
But I still want to know, I mean, you know, we come on here, you're right, we talk about films for 25 fucking minutes every week. I want to know how I feel. I've just been brushing this under the rug every time we do these films and going, oh, it's fun. It's not a real problem, so let's not think about it.
Right.
But despite that it's not a problem, I don't know how I feel about the relationships between exploiting women on film and the women they exploit. Do you think it says anything about the female persuasion?
I think, and now we are definitely treading in the dangerous territory of heady conversation in an undeserving arena.
I love it.
But
let's go full in.
Again, if you're looking at your demographic as the 19-year-old male, they're not going to raise a stink. Now, I'm going to shift gears a little bit to a slasher movie because the panes are a little bit more black and white there.
Sure.
But they're not going to bitch and moan when, you know, a 16-year-old girl is absolutely helpless and running around screaming and can't fucking save herself.
Right.
But if you put a 19-year-old boy in that situation, your target audience is then going to be like, well, I could have taken him.
Sure.
That's bullshit. That wouldn't happen to me. They all have lower voices than me, by the way.
You think that says something more about the audience then?
I mean, yeah, I think, and because
we're about the 19-year-old male, perhaps.
Yeah, I think because we're talking about an exploitation audience, or rather an exploitation film, your audience is always going to be who is being affected by these movies. And so, yeah, it's probably negative in that 19-year-old males walk out of that movie going, oh, women are helpless. Their monsters are going to fuck them if I don't protect them. But, you know, then they probably grow up and lose that.
See, that's why I think this is a perfect place to have this conversation. Because when are you more focused on the audience than when a movie is being made 100% to cater to an audience?
That's what puts it. When films are made to put asses in the seats, that's when you really look at. No, I think you're dead on.
When you learn about the asses that are going in the seats.
Well, that's why. And again, I'm going to keep shifting topics because this is one of probably the one thing about film that I have the most to say, which is targeting your audience and what that says about your audience. It's why I hate lowest common denominator, right?
Right.
Because if you're targeting your audience and then your film makes a bunch of dumb and obvious points and, oh, surprise, there's a V there and, oh, V is no Roman numeral 5, it's because you think your audience is a bunch of idiots. And that offends me.
Sure.
Or you take something like Transformers and you put some racist fucking robots in there.
Right.
And that's the filmmakers going, well, you know, racism's funny to teenage boys.
Sure.
And so it's funny. I mean, it's not offensive if it's a joke, right?
Well, remembering that we're catering to that demographic, I think, can shape a lot of what we think these films say about society.
Sure.
It's not necessarily saying something broadly about society so much as saying this is what a 19-year-old sees at a movie.
Yeah.
And when that's the only question it's answering, the implications of that are a lot less horrifying.
Sure. Well, and you can then extrapolate, like, well, if a 19-year-old male sees 10 of these movies a year, is that going to shape his social outlook?
Sure. Well, that's kind of a different conversation, but certainly part of it.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like, it becomes... If you can focus on an individual demographic, especially something as specific as a single age of a single gender,
right?
Furthermore, of a single country, you can really see what was going on at the time when those movies were being made.
You know, we've had this conversation before about nudity no longer being objectifying after the premise, about how we see films with, you know, what a film markets as sexuality, but we look at it and go, hey, no one's masturbating to this.
Right.
You know, this isn't really sexy. It's just kind of weird.
Yeah.
And that's true here too. I mean, when women are naked in Humanoids from the Deep, there is nothing sexy about it.
It's true.
But that might not be true to a 19-year-old who doesn't
Who
have
hasn't
as
seen
wide
tits.
Yeah, doesn't have as wide access to that, I guess, or didn't before the
Yeah.
internet. The internet might change that.
Right.
You know, when you see this in a movie that isn't geared towards that audience, I think it's more in the spirit of exploitative cinema.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Adam Green might go and make a movie that has those elements, not for the 19-year-old male demographic, but because he remembers being 19 in a cinema and going there hoping to like see a nipple slip out of
Score
somebody's
some
yeah,
boobies.
right?
Yeah.
So, you know, that draws people, but again, I don't think that necessarily means there's objectification in the film.
Yeah.
You know, every time one of these conversations comes up about how are women portrayed in a film, I have trouble figuring out exactly what the right criteria is.
Yeah.
It's usually, well, are women portrayed in a positive light, which, I mean, that's really not a very accurate criteria, because then you also have the entire body of femme fatale, and that was, you
Right.
know, a poor light, but we've talked about that being an interesting place for female
Sure.
actors in the history of cinema, empowering women. To say a man plays a great villain doesn't say anything about men in culture, but I kind of think, are you familiar with the Bechdel test? I think that's what it's called. It's the gender bias in
No.
fiction. Okay, so the idea is, and I don't know how much this applies here, but the idea behind the test is basically there's if there is a scene in the movie where two women talk to each other about something, and that something is other than a man, it passes this test, right?
Okay.
And you can go through movies, and I mean, an alarming number of movies don't pass this test. They don't have a scene
Sure.
where two women just talk to each other about something that isn't a man. And the test, I mean, people go back and forth about whether or not it means anything. Real life often doesn't pass that fucking test, so who cares? But I think about criteria like, you know, the Bechdel test for evaluating these films and going, what do I want to see from the portrayal of women in films? Do I want them to be role models? Do we have to demonstrate their intelligence? Is it about objectification? Is it men versus, you know, we've talked a lot about, well, yeah, all the women are idiots in this movie, but all the men are idiots too.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about, okay, how is a movie portraying women? Do any of those stick out in your mind? Where do you go to that? If a movie asks, well, is this, or somebody asks you, is this movie fair to women? Or is this a good portrayal of women?
Man, that's hard.
How do you make a criteria for that?
I guess I look at whether the women have strong roles and independent roles, and whether they can get on without any male
Support?
Yeah, I guess
If they can handle it on their own.
But like, doesn't that also seem kind of offensive?
It seems condescending, doesn't it?
Well, it seems like you're gauging a female's role based on her interaction with men.
Sure.
Rather.
Sure.
That's just as backwards to be like, well, this woman, this is a strong female role because she doesn't need men.
Yeah.
Your criteria for whether or not it's a good portrayal of women shouldn't be based on
men.
Yeah, it
Kind of
shouldn't have
throws
a
the whole
reference
thing
point
under- yeah.
in Cox.
You know, we have the photographer in this movie who is the token knows everything character.
Right.
And so I don't know that I would say that's a great character, because that's just,
I definitely would not.
that's the know-it-all character from any of these films that
Yeah.
comes in and, you know, if it was Morgan Freeman, we'd be bitching about it.
Yeah.
But it's a woman, and so now we're going, look, the film is saying something pleasant
Yeah.
about women.
But she comes in and she's kind of a bitch.
Right,
And
right.
she comes into this, I don't know.
Well, she's
I feel
also
like,
a thin character, right? I mean, she's
Right,
just a
yeah.
cliche, even though it's a good cliche, so to speak.
Yeah. I feel like when you play a role of somebody that comes into a town full of people who are obviously less intelligent than you, and instead of, you know, taking it with a grain of salt and going, this is these people's livelihood, they've been here for generations fishing, and instead you go, this is wrong because I'm from the big city,
Right.
and I know what this is supposed to, you're never going to
Sure.
seem like a good person.
Sure.
And that's it. That's her role, basically, is to push people around, and that's I guess supposed to be this skeletal version of being a strong character. But you're right, it's just paper thin, and she's just kind of a dick to everybody.
It's the kind of character, I mean, you'd never see a character like that in a Whedon film. You know what I mean?
Right.
You wouldn't go, oh, yeah, Whedon films have such great portrayal of women. Here's a bunch of women who know everything and explain the plot. It's just poor. I guess my answer is just, what would
Right.
Whedon do? Like, I just put that off and go, I don't know. He probably knows better than I do. Let's see if these resemble characters from his films.
WWWD.
Something like that. Let's shelve that for a second and talking about Mars Needs Women, because there's another thing I don't want to get completely overshadowed.
Okay.
And that is how iconic Mars Needs Women is.
Larry Buchanan is the director of Mars Needs Women. I'm just going to paint the scene
Please.
before Mars Needs Women becomes the thing that it is.
Yeah.
So Larry Buchanan was very similar to Ed Wood in his career. We've talked about Ed Wood. He's
It's funny. I had a feeling Ed Wood would come up on this show.
Larry Buchanan is that guy in Ed Wood who tells Ed to make I Got a Sex Change or whatever the fuck that was.
Sure.
You know that guy in that tiny office?
Right.
Larry Buchanan is the guy that's like, I don't know, Mars Needs Women. It's a movie about Martians that need to have sex with women.
Right.
And then somebody goes, great, can you make that 80 minutes? And he goes, I can make it 20 and I have stock footage.
Oh my God. Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
Well, if we start out this conversation just in the cement, let's talk about foundations, things we know about.
Uh-huh.
We know us some Ed Wood.
Yeah.
And we know some stock footage.
Yeah.
This has to be the most padded movie I have ever seen in my fucking life. I have seen stock footage reels that are less padded than Mars Needs Women.
This movie, the plot is seriously one line that they had to stretch out into some sort of story. I think the moment for me where I realized that the stock footage was, because there are films that we've done that show, oh, there's a spaceship, oh, there's an F-15.
Sure.
It's always jets.
Right.
Jets and military footage are the easiest thing to obtain from stock. The moment for me where I was like, okay, this is the football game.
Oh, yeah.
There's just a football game going on, full on announcer,
right,
watching the plays.
Right.
And then it every once in a while cuts to a Martian,
right,
like walking around in the stands.
Sure.
And then the announcer goes, let's call attention to this woman who is popular. She's a popular woman.
Just a guy stalling.
Right. And
I've never seen a film stall the way this
Martian
does.
Cuts to the Martian turning presumably in the direction of the woman, and then back to the woman as she's smiling, unbeknownst being ogled by kidnappy Martians.
Right.
Then the football game ends.
I mean, for me, I was looking for.
That goes.
I was, on watch for this stuff, and it's so blatant, and there's so much of it. But the one that was pretty early, where I was kind of going, "What the fuck are they doing?" is all the announcements that are coming over that gray loudspeaker.
Yeah.
And they just have the same 5 seconds of that loudspeaker. Uh-huh. So they're zooming into it and zooming out of it. And I mean, they don't have 5 seconds of it. They probably have a guy who's getting paid a day rate to sit in a room and film a loudspeaker. It's just, shoot everything you could do with this. We're going to use it a lot. I mean, that's representative of a lot of these shots. They just sit on the shot forever. And they repeat the shot. It's fucking gut busting. It's one of my favorite things about the movie.
Oh, it's fucking hilarious.
It's watching somebody who isn't prepared completely fucking stall for something.
Well, and Larry Buchanan is self-proclaimed schlockmeister.
I don't know what that means.
I had to look up the word schlock because I'm...
when you type schlockmeister into Google, what came up?
I clicked through on Wikipedia. That's how I get... When with a word like schlockmeister, you don't
want to play it safe? I want to tell you about my best Google search ever later, but... Well, that'll be a tease for later.
But yeah, since I'm a goyim, I didn't understand what schlock meant.
I don't know. I'm so glad I don't have to have a finger on an edited button. If we were on radio, I wouldn't even know what the fuck to do right now.
Anyway, so schlock basically means garbage, trash.
Okay.
Just something bad that is bad.
Right.
He's a self-proclaimed schlockmeister, which he just makes stuff that's bad that he knows is bad, but he always turns a profit or breaks even.
Sure.
And apparently... when he died, the obituary in Texas. So first off, I'm mentioning Texas. The whole film was shot in his hometown because he didn't want to go anywhere.
Right.
Else.
Why would you? You got to pay to travel, man. You're not going to do that.
Right. But when he died, the obituary read something. I don't remember the person that they quote, and I don't remember the exact quote. So feel free to email us the exact quote, and or fucking don't. But it was something along the lines of, his art was so bad that it achieved a level of grace or something like that.
Interesting.
Sometimes art is so terrible that it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because this was way back before bad for the sake of good mattered.
Yeah.
With video and with cult theaters that screen non-new release movies, cult stuff is a lot more applicable to everything else. But you have to keep in mind, this is coming out when theaters are only screening films that are coming out, and that's the only way you can see a movie.
Sure.
And so cult value didn't really apply. But he was one of those rare breeds that made shit, knew he made shit, and it was just worked out great for him.
Well, and it's lived in infamy for that. From the second you hear the scientist deliver that line in the beginning, or the guy in the white coat or whatever, and it's just the flattest cardboard acting.
Yeah.
It's telling you everything you need. It's like, this is about the caliber of acting you're getting. The message is Mars needs women. And then the
First,
title.
it's we've got a message. It's 3 words. I don't care how many
Right.
words it is.
Right.
Let's get through this scene as fast as possible.
Right.
Okay, but we picked up a transmission. The transmission contained a message, as I previously stated. However, this time I will not state how many words were in the message. Well, what did the message say, soldier?
It's a full fucking stop after
Yeah.
every single. The message is Mars needs. I love it. I love it. It's the kind of thing, especially when that title shows up, it makes you want to fucking shout to cheer at this movie.
It's one of those movies I wish I saw in the theater.
When other films call back to this kind of exploitative cinema, they're calling back specifically to that 5 minutes of Mars Needs Women. It really is. I mean, you couldn't. It's almost self-aware. It's not at all self-aware. It's completely fucking oblivious. But later, when it was self-aware, they would do it beat by beat the way the title to Mars Needs Women was delivered.
Right.
You know, we talked about stuff with Ed Wood being actually kind of the opposite of a conversation we had on Nothing. We're talking on Nothing about what if you were oblivious to the fact you were a bad artist. And we decided, well,
Right.
maybe that was a bad idea. But Ed Wood would have had no career.
That's true.
He was oblivious to the fact he was a terrible artist, and that's why he was what he was. That's why he made
That's
all
true.
of that.
In his lifetime, though, he had no career, which is sad.
Sure.
That's the thing where, again, to flip that back on the other side is maybe he would have fucking started a flower shop
Sure.
and not been beaten down his whole life.
And all that could have been. You'll never fucking know.
Granted, his legacy is absolutely gigantic.
Sure.
But at the time when he was making these shit movies and he was doing a terrible job, everybody just kept telling him that.
Right, right.
And that sucks. I mean, it does suck. I don't want to bring anybody down, but you know, Ed Wood died and then he's in the ground getting eaten by maggots and worms, and meanwhile we're like, that guy was great.
Yeah.
But while he
Sure.
was walking around doing what we have now deemed great, we were all like, dude, what the hell's your problem? Stop making movies. Knock it off.
But he had this enthusiasm and this passion that was,
Sure.
you know, it burst through everybody else telling him how much he sucked.
It's about vision. If you have the vision and you're set that vision is worth your pursuit,
Mm-hmm.
basically, fuck everybody else. I'm making Mars Needs Women.
Well, and so with Ed Wood, those were things you would see he'd try and make little jokes that wouldn't land, and it would be cringeworthy, and he would persevere through all of that. And that was the thing. I mean, I've told you before, I don't enjoy fucking anything, ironically. That was the thing I genuinely enjoyed about Ed Wood's films. But with Mars Needs Women, I mean, it's even another level. Mars Needs Women is a completely serious film. It doesn't even try and make a fucking joke. Not even the Ed Wood style jokes that don't land.
Right.
But this has literally not one fucking joke in it.
Yeah, and that's a big part of its cult appeal is how seriously it takes itself.
Sure. It almost plays like a romance film, like some kind of if it had been executed successfully, you know what I mean? It's these
Yes.
Martians, and they one finds true love, but not a fucking wink or nod the entire
Yeah.
time, completely straight. And it became the best example of this kind of cliche of this thing. And I think on Double Feature, we should just call it, you know, Mars Needs Women.
Yeah,
Because it is.
that's fine.
This is a type of genre that I don't know if you'll ever see it done more purely than here,
Yeah.
where it is, we have nothing but this concept, so it's 100% of what our film's about. We're playing it completely straight, and we don't even know that it could, as if they're unaware jokes exist, as if there's no way any.
Right.
Not one guy
Sure.
goes, hey, what if people don't take this seriously? Shouldn't we have some? No, it's all serious because our stock footage is serious. We don't want to pay another guy to come in and be the joke man.
We didn't write any jokes. I'm not paying somebody to write jokes.
So this is part of why I wanted to have a lot of the conversation about how do we evaluate women in films with humanoids.
Sure.
Because by the time we get to Mars Needs Women, I'm starting to get this idea of where these things are coming from.
Sure.
I mean, this is it's a strange genre cliche to go. How did you position the theme of today's double feature to me?
Things not of Earth need to fuck Earth women.
Right, right. That's an actual genre.
Yeah.
That's not just we're all making jokes about the film Mars Needs Women, but there are other films that take themselves fairly seriously.
Right.
I would argue perhaps none as well as this one, and some perhaps more subtly.
Yeah.
But there's tons of them.
There's a whole thing in cinema about, I mean, I don't know, man. It's almost a pornographic idea,
Yeah.
right? It falls basically in the same realm as bestiality,
Sure,
where people like to watch things that aren't human try to fuck women.
sure.
That's what we're doing.
So
let's not sugarcoat it.
It's part of, I mean, it's just a cultural idea that's out there running rampant.
Sure.
And
That's what everybody wanted from King Kong.
is that part of King Kong too, I guess? I mean, in a much classier kind of way.
Yeah.
It gets to, in this movie, and they are trying to be classy, it's Earth's most desirable women.
Sure.
So we can go back and forth with that criteria of, is Mars Needs Women bad for women?
Right.
And I think the film does too. It doesn't know what the fuck is, I think I better stop acting like a woman and start acting like a scientist
Right.
or start acting more like a woman and less like a scientist. I think that was the line.
Right.
So that stuff comes back and forth too. It's a bunch of people's confused ideas about women in society.
Right.
But I think this is also, for a lot of our audience, it might be hard to think about this ever being a serious premise that films try to
Sure.
conduct. But we have this today with more with impregnation, I think.
Sure.
Films like we talked about Alien versus Predator
Right.
way back, one of our earlier Killapaloozas. But that is Alien, isn't it?
I think in a way, I think that the difference between something like Alien, which does this in an unbelievably tasteful sense,
Mhm.
and again, and to go back, gives us probably one of the most powerful female roles in cinema history.
Sure.
I think that these films, again, going back to that 19-year-old male, are contingent on men wanting to not even, I almost said protect, but I think it's just claim. I think it's just trying to pander to a 19-year-old boy going, don't let Martians fuck your women because
Right.
they're yours to fuck.
Sure, sure. There's that kind of ownership.
Yeah, and I think that that's kind of the mentality that it's gearing to. And I think that I think that as we grow as a society, something like Alien stems out of that, where instead of it being a dichotomy of men protecting women or women losing, it can eventually fall into women protecting themselves for the sake of men.
I'm going to throw something even crazier at you.
Oh,
and I
please
want
do.
your opinion on this because this might just be me totally out of nowhere, right? We're talking about these cliches that exist.
Yeah.
So, there's aliens having sex with women and chasing the women around and capturing the women. And that falls into even the damsel in distress type of abducting your woman, you got to get her back sort of idea.
Yeah.
But that's evolved into aliens getting women pregnant. And
Sure.
when we see something like that in, Ridley Scott's Alien, I mean, there's such terrible writing at a conceptual level with these cliches that you think
Yeah.
there's no way you could ever make a good film. And then you make something like Alien. And not only does it have, like you said, one of the crowning female roles in cinema, but it also is at its core, at least has that cliche in it.
Sure.
And so we've come so far that I don't know that in today's day and age, I think the cliche still appears in movies because it's been there. And so it's kind of a classic thing.
Right.
But when this was happening in the 50s, I'm going back to the Invasions of the Body Snatchers, Rosemary's Baby
Sure.
conversation and kind of going, well, what else was happening in the 50s? What were we thinking about? And, the civil rights movement is going on
Yeah.
in the 50s and 60s.
Sure.
And, there's also a cliche we've never talked about, which is black men are coming to steal my white women.
Yeah. Well, that's I mean, those are some of my favorite movies.
But you talk about King Kong, and I mean,
that is what King
if
Kong
you
is.
had asked me
King Kong,
what cliche
yeah.
is King Kong, I mean, it's not one we like to talk about because it's so fucking ugly,
Well,
right?
Yeah. Have you, by any chance, do you watch the show Key and Peele?
No.
It's Jordan Peele and Keegan Michael Key. They used to both be Mad TV cast members, but it's similar to the Chappelle Show in that they come out, do a little bit of stand up, show like a digital sketch that they did, a little bit more, you know, a sketch that they filmed and whatever.
Right.
They do all these sketches that are they're very racially sensitive, but because of where they fall in society, they can do it.
Sure.
And it's really tasteful, in my opinion. People hate it.
Sure.
Some people are very offended by it. But they talked about how at a party one time, some guy just walked up to him and was like, you know, I don't even like King Kong. A white guy. I don't even like King Kong because it's fucking racist. And they're like, what? And he's like, you know, it's a symbol of the white man taking the black man from his home and bringing it to New York. And then he tries to take the white women. So the white man shoots him down. I think it's racist. And they go, I didn't even think that about King Kong.
Right. Well, and I always fear that territory because I go, am I reading into this too much?
That's the point. That's the point I'm trying to make. Is King Kong is totally, even if the filmmakers didn't intend that point, it raises the question. I wasn't trying to back you into a corner and go, ha, now you're racist.
Right.
I was instead trying to defend you and go like, there are two total separate groups of people. Some people think King Kong is a movie about a giant monkey. Right. And some people think King Kong is a movie about
race relations.
You know, yeah.
Well, and it's something that's really, I get more and more interested in talking about this because it's such a taboo and there's all this white guilt. So people don't want to talk about it. And it also sounds absurd. Yeah. So there's all these things like, you know, I mean, they wrote a sketch about it. It sounds absurd.
Yeah, right.
I link it to civil rights, not just being a huge, you know, racial episode in the country's history, but you have to think about a lot of people who are opposed to civil rights are now thinking, okay, well, okay, so think about gay marriage, right?
Yep.
The big fear on the socially conservative side is, well, these gays are going to get out there and ruin my marriage. You know, they're going to take something that I knew worked and that was precious to me, and they're going to fuck it up. And I'm thinking the same thing probably happened with civil rights. We start letting black people go out and vote and go do all these things and go to our dances. Black people are going to steal my women.
Sure. Well, there's, again, just to reference pop culture, are you familiar with Body Count, Ice-T's metal band?
You have talked on the show before about Body Count, I think.
One such hilarious and very potent subject to talk about race relations and stuff like that. Go and listen to Body Count's There Goes the Neighborhood.
Sure.
The entire song is told from the point of a white male about how upset he is that black people are playing metal.
Sure.
Because that's like the last sacred thing for the white male. And now these black guys are on stage playing guitar better than white men, and now they're stealing all the women, and there goes the neighborhood.
Sure. Well, and I said I wanted to mention my my Google search for you, my Bing internet search.
Oh, yes, please.
But so in thinking about this and going, well, before I talk about this on the show, let's see if anybody else has ever had this idea and I'm not just fucking nuts and going to say something where you go, Eric, what the hell are you thinking? So I go on my phone and I get the robot to type in black men coming to steal white women. That's now in my search history on my phone.
Yeah.
And I learned such crazy things about backwards modern society, Michael. They are terrifying. So what I expected to come up was like maybe people looking at cliches in movies. Or
please tell me there's like official government websites.
No. It's all like Dear Abby type.
Oh, really?
People writing in worried that it's all message boards of people with this legitimate concern.
Man,
in the last couple years, I mean, modern people.
I think the only thing that could have been better is if you were just like, it's just a series of Yahoo Answers.
Well, that is kind of what it looks like. I was just going to say, it's Yahoo Answers pages that all start the same. They all go, I don't have problems with interracial couples, but
are black
do
men
you guys think
all
that
the
black
white
men
women?
are? But you know what's great is it's gotten progressive because that's not the top one I found. It's not even in the top 5. Most of them are, don't you guys think that white women steal all the black men? Or don't you think that, you know,
wow.
Yeah, it's all of these weird different mixtures of some kind of spin on.
I don't know if that offends my sexist problem or my racist problem.
Sure, yeah, it's weird. So what it says, and this is actually why this is amazing about humanity and not terrifying, it's talking about people's insecurities. It's why we lace this in a science fiction film.
Sure.
Because during the 50s, everybody had this concern in the back of their head, or some people, or next to no, I don't know how many people. I wasn't around in the 50s, But some people had a concern. They go, man, yeah, I'm really for civil rights, but I'm really fucking lonely. And is it a good idea to invite all these other potential male competitors to my dance and steal my
Sure.
women away?
Right.
And, so you don't talk about it because it sounds like an awful concern, but it is this primal thing in you that goes,
Sure.
competitor in the fields.
Right.
And I think when you go on the internet and see that women are concerned about it, men are concerned about it, black people are concerned about it, white people are concerned about it, it just means that we all have inadequacies and we fear anybody coming to steal our women.
I have in recent moments pulled up Larry Buchanan's obituary.
I see that there.
If I may just read that,
Please.
to close this out.
Great.
One quality united Mr. Buchanan's diverse output. It was not so much that his films were bad. They were deeply, dazzlingly, unrepentantly bad. His work called to mind a famous line from H.L. Mencken, who, describing President Warren G. Harding's prose, said, "It is so bad that a sort of grandeur creeps into it."
Our website is doublefutureshow.com. Our email address is doublefutureshow@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts about everything from today's episode. I want to say, I'm going to tear down all of the great groundwork we've laid here and say, I'm really interested in hearing from women.
Yeah.
As if I didn't learn anything. But the truth of the matter is that I just want to continue using Double Feature as a vehicle to pick up ladies. So, you know what? I like talking to them more. That's fine. No, everybody write in, because I do want to know, we raised a lot of, this was a really heavy show.
Yeah.
Raised a lot of points of conversation. I want to know what criteria people use.
If you pick hard-hitting films like this, you're
Right.
you're bound to have a heavy show.
Want to know what criteria people use to evaluate women in films when they think about it, because I know people in our audience fucking think about it, even though we can probably all agree that, again, neither of these films are really hurting women at all. But, you want to think about it. I want to know everything about coming to steal our women. I just want to know. Also, your Kickstarter is going to be on our website. There's a short link to get to that, too.
Yeah, you can just go to kickstart.glittermouse.com.
Kickstart, one word.
Yeah.
Kickstart.glittermouse.com.
Yeah.
In the final moments, it would be great for me if I could point to our show and go, look, Michael, people from our show help your band. Isn't that great?
That's true.
So seriously, Podmanity, don't let me down. You'll make me look like an asshole. What are we doing next time on the show?
We're going to revisit the Marx Brothers in a non-Hitler atmosphere, which really opens us up to talk more about the Marx Brothers, because I won't have any grounds to talk about World War II. We're going to do Duck Soup and Indie Game. Indie Game is your pick. I'm a little bit unfamiliar with Indie Game.
Indie Game is, I'll tell you exactly why I wanted to do this. Because it's our fucking show and I want to watch Indie Game this week.
Yeah, that's why I picked Duck Soup too.
Well, so we've had bouncing off this conversation, I guess. We'll just go right into another one. We've, for a long time, just kind of made fun of our audience that's uncomfortable with gaming culture and sees it as not art or not worth talking. They equate it with, people talking about sports. It's off topic. It has no relevance.
Yeah, which is horrible. Who would ever talk about sports? It's boring.
A totally different kind of artistry, sports, than gaming.
Uh-huh.
And only slightly different gaming to film. But I wanted to challenge our audience this week.
Uh-huh.
This indie game movie is about indie game development. And I think it's a really good movie. And it really makes me feel for the people who make these games. And I think it's also really interesting to show to people who aren't into gaming. So I kind of wanted to challenge people the people who write in and scoff off gaming every week. I'm not asking you to go play games and give them a try, but maybe watch Indie Game, hear what we have to say about it next week on the show, and we'll see how everybody feels after that.
I guess so. Watch more fucking film.
Bye. Taking into consideration, though, is that nothing kills a party faster than bringing your dead dog.
Yeah.
When you're trying to have a little dance, a good time, carrying a dead dog in your arms, probably.
That's very true.
Probably not the way to go.
No.
I do think this movie has a really good tip for exploitation films, and something that Mars Needs Women maybe would have been able to use, which is when you need to fill time, you just paste in teenagers making out.
Yeah. Yep, when it comes down to it, you need to exploit the libido and exploit the blood.
It's such an easy thing to fill time, too. I mean, the scenes, they're on a beach, and they make out for a couple minutes. Someone watches them. You get in a tent. You make out for a couple more minutes.
Yeah.
You could really fill about 120 minutes with that.
Yeah, well, there are entire Russ Meyer movies that are just topless girls dancing.
Sure.
I'm not saying that like, whoa, what a crazy experiment in
Right,
cinema.
right.
I'm saying like, if you have an hour to kill, put on Mondo topless because you won't be bored.
Actually, let's stay on the tent moment for a second, because there's
Okay.
something weird that happened in here that I haven't asked your opinion about yet.
Oh, please.
As you know, nothing says make out like ventriloquism, apparently.
Yeah, that guy's an actual ventriloquist actor.
Oh, wow.
He's like a big ventriloquist name.
You say that and it all makes sense to me now.
Yeah, does it?
I was really enjoying
You are the first person in history whose world was brought to light by the phrase big ventriloquist name.
Well, in my head, and I was really enjoying that brief pause there between when I said that and before I received the information.
Yeah.
Because it's like the dog thing. Anything could happen in that moment.
Out in the late 70s, early 80s, when Roger Corman was really making mad bank on movies like
Right.
Humanoids from the Deep.
Monsters, Humanoids from the Deep.
They would put a movie out, and then it would do well or poorly in the box office, at which point the creators of the film would change the title and put it out again.
Really?
Yeah, and that's how they made more money on the same film.
Wow.
So the film, when it went to reel, was supposed to be called Monster, and I think that was like the UK title.
Sure.
But then this was, the late 70s, right before video.
Right.
And so by the time it went to video, based on the commercial failure of Monster, and by commercial failure, I mean it made profit, but nobody was talking about it.
Sure.
So when they put it to video, they called it Humanoids from the Deep in an effort to squeeze the very last blood-sucking penny
Sure.
out of the film.
It's not and this often strikes me about exploitation. It's not catering to the lowest common denominator.
No.
This is a film that appeals to a very small demographic, and it certainly has some punches to it.
Well, it's fucking violent as hell.
Right.
Which,
We start the movie with a dead dog, right?
yeah.
I wish all movies killed the dog just right away. Kids and dogs.
Yep.
It's a shock value thing, and we've talked about it before. But I think what the movie means to say when it does this is, anything could happen. Look how we killed the dog.
Yeah, we fucking killed the dog, so now what? What won't we do?
But
Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
my name is Eric, and I'm here with kickstarting champion Michael Kester.
Oh, wow. Is that what I'm going as today?
Let's just straight out of the gate on that, right? Because we're literally down to the 11th hour.
Yeah.
Well, not literally. We're figuratively down to the 11th hour. We have several hours left. But when you're listening to this, it may be the 11th hour.
Yeah, it's true.
So
Yeah.
why don't you give me the movies we're doing and the awesome Kickstarter?
So today we're doing Humanoids from the Deep and Mars Needs Women. And the awesome Kickstarter, that's for my band Glittermouse. We're trying to get our album funded on the internet there.
Right.
And we're pretty close. We're not as close as I'd like to be, which would be done.
Well, you're moments away from being done. So what you mean is
Yeah.
you'd like to be closer to your monetary goal, not
Yeah,
closer to being
right.
done, because that will happen. I can guarantee
Yeah,
you the
That's true.
Kickstarter.
Will end regardless of its success.
Right.
Yeah, we need a lot more money than I have.
Right.
So anybody who wants to donate to our Kickstarter, the link will be on the website, and I'll throw it up on the Facebook again.
I don't even know that I'd say this is probably we're a month into your Kickstarter to be correcting
Yeah.
you on this, but I don't even know that I'd use the word donation. I think they're investing in the album.
It's pledges. They're called pledges.
Are they?
And
I don't know that
investments, yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that, because you're basically funding the album.
For us, it's investing. Yeah. I mean, the way we have our Kickstarter set up is you're essentially lining yourself up to be a producer for the record. Kickstarter calls it pledges.
The other thing that you haven't really mentioned on the show is you guys have ridiculous incentives.
Yeah.
You can basically pledge next to no money and exploit the people in the band to do, crazy things.
Yeah, the one incentive that keeps getting bought is that we will read your favorite book from start to finish, like in a video or in an audio file,
It's ridiculous.
or we will reenact your favorite episode of television to the best of our ability.
How much does that cost?
$75.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. That's $75.
You know that my favorite book is Atlas Shrugged, and it's some 1,200 pages.
There are 5 of us. We'll get it done.
All right. So
You can
that's
just go to kickstart.glittermouse.com.
this is the last moment to do that. So go do that.
This is, yeah, it's over. It's over on March 2nd. So if you're listening to this after March 2nd, you're too late.
We're gonna spoil both Humanoids from the Deep and Mars Needs Women.
Yeah.
So you can use the chapters that are actually inside the very show itself. That's my favorite way to phrase that.
Yeah.
Just, click around, figure out how that works, and skip over the movies. Humanoids from the Deep is not called Monster. Where's the discrepancy there?
Okay, so I know we've talked about this before, but when movies came,
The thing about the kind of movies that actually kill the dogs and kill the children is anything couldn't happen in those films. Actually, only one thing could happen, and that's the other characters can die.
right.
So by anything can happen, it means anything within the subset of these 4 people will or will not die.
But then you have to keep in mind that this film has the random side children that may or may not get eaten and or raped by the humanoids.
Sure, right.
Big letdown.
Piranha style, where we may just
Yeah.
bring more people in or not.
Yeah, right.
My favorite types of these shock value moments are where they kind of rub your nose in it.
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite dog deaths are when they're not shy at all. They show the mangled corpse later. They let the characters get traumatized by the dog's death.
Right.
It's not just, throw it in the meat grinder and we're done with it.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing in movies. I mean, that's why I have such a fixation about the dog deaths being a taboo. Because people get really worked up about this.
Oh, yeah.
Some people will not watch a movie where a dog gets hurt. They
Yeah.
just won't do it.
Then there's something like Apocalypse Now where they actually kill a cow.
Sure. Well, I mean, that's
For real.
We're talking about a totally, that's something we talked about on Cannibal Holocaust too.
Right.
Was actually hurting animals during the film.
Yeah, but Apocalypse Now is considered one of the greatest films of all time. So I guess we'll forego that violent animal death. But I don't want to watch Humanoids from the Deep if they're going to fake kill that poor puppy.
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about one versus the other, the thing that drives me nuts about that is these people who will not see dogs get murdered in films have no problem with humans being mangled, decapitated.
That's very true.
Something we're not